Anglia Venues is a platform where we host events in Cambridge, and our ethos is to save churches from being demolished. So we take spaces from churches, we commercialize them, we help them, we help a client that wants to organize an event, and we're kind of the middleman, but for churches specifically. So we're gonna do more of these events, also outside of the studio. So the bigger they're gonna get, the bigger the spaces are gonna be. And as well as that, there's gonna be different speakers, there's gonna be different topics, and it's just cool. I think it's cool to save churches. I know it's something that I've never heard before, so this is why we started. And you're in Cambridge Chronicles at the moment, and I'm proud to say that we are the only studio in the world who is sponsored by Airy. So everything we're gonna do from next month onwards is gonna be cinema quality. So every movie probably you saw was shot on an Airy, and everything we will produce will be shot on an Airy too. So this event is gonna have two different kind of situations. So the first side of it will be a fireside chat with no presentations or anything. And the second part of it will be presentation. So it will be more kind of an event situation. So the way it's gonna be is that we're gonna present ourselves, the speakers will present themselves, they're gonna talk about the topics that they will have to discuss, and they will also take questions from the audience on the whiteboard, and it's just gonna go like that. So I'll keep it very short because we have 4 more speakers lined up. I'll be mostly talking about branding, and that's it actually. I'll be just talking about branding and how consistency works within branding, within a project or within a situation. So more about myself is I'm Dom. I have a photography background. I always worked at the highest levels of photography and clients. I switched to owning a studio 2 years ago now, and I think we work with the coolest people ever. So we worked in New York Times, with Kazoo, with Airbnb. Mistakes, personal branding, okay.
How far can somebody stretch a brand to have a successful campaign?
I'll take 2 more.
How does it work?
Huh?
How does it work?
How does it work? Branding? And I'll take 1 more.
How do you turn branding into revenue?
Branding into revenue. And the very final one, you have time. Anyone else?
Why didn't it work?
Okay. Okay, someone take time, please. So we're gonna speak I will speak for less than 10 minutes. Everyone else will have a chance to speak for more than 12 to 15 minutes. I'll start with why is branding important? I think we have someone in the room who teaches credibility. What was it again? You mentioned earlier you teach?
I'm not teaching. I'm helping businesses to become trusted.
Okay.
credible, and chosen.
Okay, chosen. Okay, I like that. So trusted, credible, chosen. So we're gonna start with this. So branding is something that you recognize, something that you look at and you say, okay, I recognize this because I've seen it before. Airbnb. Every time you see a campaign from Airbnb, you kind of recognize it. So it kind of stays there. If you see a campaign from Booking.com, for example, I would make this example. I would like you to see it. So if you look at branding from Airbnb and branding from Booking.com and Airbnb, you'll see two completely different worlds, if that makes sense. So with Airbnb, you always have something quirky, something nice, something new. While Booking.com is something so simple, it's outdated graphics and very bad imagery. So why is branding important? It's because it positions you a lot higher over your competitors. It's something that you say, okay, well, if I have a strong branding and messaging, they will most likely buy from me. So Dom, I think that kind of adds to your question is like, how do you convert branding into money? Is like by having a consistent and successful brand, he will most likely choose you because your branding and your presentation is stronger than someone who has a weaker branding. So to take an example, let's say I want to make an example of a local example. I'd say, let's say a coffee shop, okay? So we know of Fitzbilly's? So we know of Fitzbilly's. There's dozens of other coffee shops that are local, that are old, that are well established and everything. But why do people go to Fitzbilly's more than others? Because they have good branding, they are everywhere, and that leads into sales. Because when they launch an ad and when they launch a campaign and they put a poster in, it's always consistent, it's always there, and it kind of brings credibility. So why is the branding important? It's important because it would create credibility for a customer to buy. For instance, in our case, what we did with branding is like we really focused on branding with Cambridge Chronicles. With Cambridge Chronicles, we really focused on branding because we want to establish like the ground level of credibility, and everything else that we do, it just kind of adds on top. So I think that kind of works. Once you have a strong brand, it works over the others because they trust you more. And in terms of elements of branding, what you really need to nail down is just a couple of things. Like you need a good logo that can be recognizable. It cannot be, so for instance, a logo cannot just be a sentence because it only works in a way. A logo has to be in different shapes. It has to work in every way possible. Not only a logo is recognizable, colors are recognizable. So for instance, if you go to, once again, Airbnb, I love Airbnb. Like we work with Airbnb and I believe in them. It's like they have their simple colors that if you look at a red, at least for me as someone who works with branding, I would immediately attach them to Airbnb. I see red, it's like, oh shit, Airbnb, immediately. You should kind of have the same thing. Like you should have a color palette that kind of, resembles something. Same with font. Like good font stands out. It doesn't have to be too chaotic. So for instance, something like this is a bit too chaotic if you think about it. But this is part of a brand and you kind of read it well. You get what I mean? You have to have a bit of both, but your main language has to be, you have to have consistency and it has to be easy to read. And I think that kind of works. The other thing is, like we talked about the logo, we talked about font, colors, messaging. You have to choose how you want to message yourself. How you want to write about yourself. Because if one day you speak, oh yeah, I'm super cool and I do this, and the next day it's like, hello sir, I would like to invite you to my event. It doesn't really work. So you have to be also consistent in that. So logo is key. It has to work in black and white first before it works in any other color. It has to be, in the beginning, it has to work in a square format. And then after it works in a square format, you can fit it in here, you can fit it in here, you can fit it in here, and you can kind of fit it in there. So when you think about designing a logo, first design it in black and white, and then design it in a square shape. Everything else will follow. So why is branding important? I think I covered it. It stands out within your competition because if you're selling the same thing, but your branding is better, people most likely will choose you because of your branding. It's as simple as that. I think that is how it works. This is how everyone teaches. This is how books say. So that is what branding, this is why branding is important. Mistakes for personal branding. I think the biggest mistake for personal branding is that people don't have a brand. I think people jump to a point, but it's like, oh, hey, I'll make a case of myself here because I think I'm the only one who can just talk about myself. Is that, okay, I'm Dom, I take pictures and that's it. Okay, well, to be a photographer that, like the biggest mistake that personal brands make is that they don't have a brand. They don't think as a business. They all think, oh, I'm an entity. But with the side of branding and business is like, I have to think like a business. I should have a Google profile. I should have a website. I should have a logo. I should have a business card. Like I think 90 people out of 100, 90 out of 100 photographers don't have a business card. This was again in my case. So personal branding, the biggest mistake is not to have a brand, is to think like I'm a human being that takes pictures. But the fact is that like you have to have a brand. Like, you know, what is it? Like, you shouldn't be called Domininkas photography. You get what I mean? It should be called Dom's Images, for example. That becomes a brand. You should have a logo, you should have a business card, you should have a website. So if you don't have that, that is your biggest mistake. So this is the biggest mistake that, you know, I believe that personal branding makes. Because if you don't have that, probably whatever you're gonna say on your socials, there's gonna be no credibility to back it up. I might be the best photographer, but if I don't have a brand, how does it really work? Where do people go? What do they see? You get what I mean? If I'm a public speaker, once again, you have to have a brand, but it's a little bit different. So the biggest mistake, once again, is not to think like a business.
So often I find that the personal brand comes after you've done the brand establishment, and actually, how would you approach defining that? Because it needs to have a difference.
Mm-hmm.
You are an extension of your brand, but it's a personal take. And that's super common. We're seeing it in the fashion industry time and time again now, that actually the personal brand, after many years of development, is much stronger than the original brand.
Mm-hmm. So what would be the question?
So the question is, what's your take on how you develop that? Because
Okay.
branding is a channel, like out of the whole marketing, it's a channel, it's one piece of the puzzle. But actually what we're seeing in the branding scope is a divide between corporate branding and personal branding. They're not the same thing, they're two different functionalities. So what would you say to someone that's building a corporate brand and is seeing this trend in personal branding? What would your advice be to them as to how to separate those two and how to approach it from a strategic standpoint?
Okay, so in terms of corporate branding, you should follow the values of the business itself. So you say like, okay, I sell bicycles, we sell bicycles, because a company, a corporate business is never alone. So it's like you kind of establish the values of the business and you create a brand based on that. So the logo, the messaging is the most important bit here. So I believe so you have to kind of divide the corporate from personal. So it has to become the business is the brand, and then you kind of put the values as branding. So which could be their ethos, their location, or whatever that is. And in terms of personal branding, the one thing that you should really put on is yourself as the face. Like you are the face of the company. You get what I mean? So this is what you put the most in. This is something that we learned from Chris Do. Chris Do, I don't know if you know about Chris Do, but he was here as our first ever event. And the one thing he said, I asked the same question, more or less the same question, was like, so how do I stand out as a personal brand? And the one thing he said is like, well, do you put yourself in front of the camera? And I was like, oh no, actually don't. So you have to really put yourself in front of the camera. You have to do it really well. What I mean is like, it doesn't have to be just like, oh yeah, I'll speak about something. It has to be scripted. It has to be thought of. It has to be ABC testing. Like, you should create media days for yourself where you say like, okay, I'm gonna choose a place. I'm gonna mic myself up. I'm gonna have all these topics. I'm gonna create 100 reels. I'm gonna publish them all and see which one works best. So the difference between corporate and personal is like corporate puts its values, personal puts its personality and persona. Like I think if you have a personal brand, you also have a persona, which you kind of act on. You get what I mean? Like for instance, with Cambridge Chronicles, I put myself in there and I put my persona in there. Maybe in real life, I'm a little bit different, but my personality is in my personal brand and attach it to Cambridge Chronicles. So corporate is values of the company, personal is your personality. And you have to really push for it. It's like you have to create, I think with Cambridge Chronicles last year, we created thousands of videos, like literally thousands. And it's like some of them no one has ever seen because we're like, fuck this shit. You get what I mean? So yeah, so does that answer the question or you think, yeah? Any other questions in terms of this? No? Okay, so this was the third question I took, branding plus systems. I think I forgot about it already, sorry. Who asked this question? Who asked the third question? Who asked the questions here? I don't remember now. Yes, that was your question, yes. How does branding work? Yes, okay. I think it kind of reattaches itself to why is branding important. Branding works is like you have to have it. Like otherwise it's not gonna work. Another biggest mistake that I wouldn't attach it to mistakes of personal branding, I would attach it to mistakes of branding itself, is that businesses or corporations or whatever, they don't have an identity document. Like people often overlook it. It's like, oh yeah, like, you know, we're gonna create this campaign, or give me the logo, and that's it. People often, like businesses often send just the logo, and everything else is up to the creative agency or creative studio or the designer. So then the font changes, then the messaging changes, then the colors change, and then you as a client get it back and you're like, what is this? You don't have it because you don't have an identity document. Like, it's like a Bible. The way we use an identity document, we use it as a Bible here. So for instance, everything we do has the basics, which is the logo, how you use the logo, how you use the font, how you use the colors, how you speak to this and how you speak to that. So when our designers pick up something, they kind of just like, they know what to do, just like they put their own vision in it. So how does branding work? It works well if it has the basics. And if it doesn't have the basics, it's probably gonna go wrong. Just purely because every time you're gonna produce something, it's gonna be different. And if it's gonna be different, it's gonna go back to the cases like, why is it like, why am I not monetizing? You're not monetizing because your branding isn't consistent. That is like, you know, that is the basic level of branding. And as a branding studio, we see this often, like clients come to us and it's like, can you design this campaign? It's like, yes, we can. Like, do you have a brand identity document? They're like, what is it? And we're like, oh, fuck, like, how are we gonna work with you? We often refuse clients because they cannot provide us with an identity document and they don't want to pay for it because they don't believe in it. So if you think that, you know, branding is important, and you should as a marketeer or as any other professional creative, you should have like the basic guidelines. At least the hex of your colors, the font, the logo should be at least an SVG. You cannot send me a JPEG. You get what I mean? So like this is like the very basics of what you need to do. And branding works really well if the basics are there and if it's consistent. And then you can attach it to everything. Every post you're gonna do on social media, you'll speak in the same way. Every post that you're gonna do, you're gonna design it in the same way. Every picture you're gonna take, like photographic identity. This is something that not many people talk about for the photographers in the room. A photographic identity is as important as a brand identity. Because if I'm gonna call a photographer that is you, and then I'm gonna call you next, but my brand is the same, you should follow what we need, not what you think. You get what I mean? So a photographic identity is also as important. Like you should have guidelines where it's like, the picture should look like this. If you're gonna give me something else, it's probably not gonna work because our brand speaks like this. So there's different like branches of identity. So yeah, so design identity, photographic identity, and video identity too. Like, you know, intros and outros for a video. Like when you see Netflix, you see Tuton, you're like, oh fuck yeah. There should be the same with your brand because that is what it is. That is consistency. And it's on the design, the branding is not only design, it's also photography, it's also videography, it's also your messaging, it's also how you look and how you feel. Does that answer the question? Okay, that was VC stretch. So Don, they answered this? How you transform branding into money? Ish, did I? Okay. The stretching of a successful campaign, I think it's a bit limitless, Ola. It's really how much, I think it depends from the budget. Like how far can you stretch a campaign? It really depends from your budget. I think the limit is by having your values. Like, you know, every company should have its values. So for instance, we don't use stock images, we don't use sound, we don't use stock sound or whatever that is. I think it's good for marketing campaigns to go completely bollocks. Like you say, like, you know, I have a business, like, you know, I would spend £100,000 on doing something different because it might work. Like, I think the last campaign that kind of stood out to me was IKEA. IKEA made this campaign of a fake lollipop and with the taste of meatballs. And that was completely fake. It was like, you know, IKEA food, yeah, Chupa Chups, no. But what they did is like they completely invested in a campaign that they pushed for. They're like, okay, let's do something completely out of our order and let's see how it goes. And they went for it, and now people are requesting and they're actually producing a Chupa Chups with the taste of a meatball. It's crazy. I know it's crazy, but it works. Like, I think there's a risk element to it, and it has to be calculated. I'm sure that IKEA's marketing team, they were like, okay, we're gonna push for it, we're gonna trick some people, but if this works, we actually can like pull something off, and now the whole internet speaks about it. I think that something that happened to us recently, and that was my fault, by the way, I was like, there was this trend of, that was this for you, sir. There was this trend of Kanye West in places, just purely because he got banned from UK. So I thought of a campaign that we would generate Kanye West in Cambridge doing Cambridge things, like cycling, getting a degree, being in a Mayball, pushing a punt, and that kind of backfired at us real quick. I posted and people came to me was like, what the fuck are you doing? I believe that you want to be one of the best studios in the world. You're using AI in a very bad manner. I was like, yeah, you know what, fair enough. Like, you know, I can't, like I pushed it too far. So I think the way, like you have to risk it, and then, you know, the outcome can be positive, but you also have to think about the negative side of it, which could be like, okay, this will backfire at us, and, you know, it could ruin the reputation a little bit. I think it has to be to a point where it's like, it doesn't touch politics. It has to come to a point where it doesn't touch, what else doesn't it touch? Like, I think as long as you don't touch politics and you follow the values, it shouldn't backfire at you. But I think you can stretch really, really far by creating a campaign that has different colors, a different concept, a different brand. Like I've seen this campaign of a shoe brand, and it was absolutely amazing. This was this lowest level shoe manufacturer in America. And what they did is they opened up a shop in a shopping center. They give it a different name, they gave it a different kind of feel, and they put the price up by, I think it was 10,000%. So if a shoe was costing, like I say, 10 pounds, it was then costing 1,000. And it worked. And it kind of worked. And I was like, wow, people were coming. I was like, oh my God, look at this shoe. I just bought it. I spent 1,000 pounds. And then by the end of the campaign, they were like, yo, by the way, this is like, you know, this is this brand, and people couldn't believe it. So it works. I think stretching a campaign can be successful as long as you don't touch politics and you do something creative about it. I think that's how far you can stretch it. Does this answer the question? Is everyone happy with that answer, you think? Yeah? And branding system, that was the last question from Dom. How do you turn branding into money? It's that. It's like, it's getting the customers to choose you over some other competitors. So in your case, you're a marketing agency, aren't you? Marketing business. Marketing strategy business? What would you say it is? Like, I would like to know.
It's a local marketing.
You need to work in your brand.
Local marketing, here we are. You see, it jumps back to that. Actually, it jumps back to that.
We operate in a world where marketing agencies are really...
Such a bad word.
It's a dirty word in industry because high retainers...
Why?
High retainers...
Okay.
Everyone's been scammed by an SEO company,
They've had a bad
PPC
experience.
company, hijacked by their website. It's just, you know, it's
bad
dirty.
advice, and it's agency-led, not client-led.
Okay.
What we do is we look at the whole end-to-end business, right? That can be how the buyer journey from start to end, from, you know, manufacturing down to end result, and we look at what's not working, and that sometimes touches marketing for sure, and a lot of the time it does, right? It's like, give them really good foundations, good branding, good solid consistency across all those touch points, and that unlocks a lot of growth potential. But we do it in the client's best interest,
Okay.
no matter what it is. And sometimes it's not even that, sometimes it's operational. And it doesn't really matter to us, because what we care about, I don't care whether someone thinks we're a social media agency or we build websites or whatever your takeaway is, that's completely fine. But what we do is we help make sure that that brand is set up for success for the long term, not just for 6 weeks after we finish doing our work.
Okay.
And that's a very different take in this industry. And I think that's where we have our marital problems, is by arguing over how do you position that. Because ultimately what we're doing is we're just helping businesses thrive. And it doesn't really matter what that is. Like we've between us, manufactured and sold and marketed products in lots of different industries for lots of different high wealth brands. And so, I can pick up in all sorts of places, and that's what we want to do, but for your local butcher, your plant shop, your retailer.
Okay. So my question here is, going back to the question that you asked them, is like, how do you put branding into money? Is literally like, find out who you keep competing against and make sure you build a stronger brand. And that, I think that will be the only thing you will need to do in order to kind of win over them and monetize more people. I think that will be it.
Yeah, I mean, I want to hear the other speakers, so I won't take up too much time, but I think that's really oversimplifying it. But I get where you're coming from, but I think it's not that black and white.
It's never black and white. There's always a gray element in it. But in terms of branding, how do you monetize that is literally that. You cannot monetize branding. It's like, it's a thing. Yeah, it's that. It's like, it's that. Yeah.
Prices over everything and every channel. So I agree. Dom's being facetious.
Fair enough, that's fair enough. And
It's a Friday night.
and before we move on to where's Ollie? Ollie speak. Oh, okay, cool. Okay, so while he's there, I'll take one more question if anyone is interested. Anyone else?
How has branding changed over the years?
Not much. Not much. Branding hasn't changed that much. It's like it's always been about consistency. It's always been about like, you know, the logo. What has changed is the channels of it. It's like, you know, how do you advertise on different channels? Or how do you keep that branding on different channels? Like it used to be buses, it used to be newspapers, it used to be the radio station. Okay, now it's social media and there's different branches of social media. So it has changed in that, but the basics of branding hasn't changed. We still apply the same techniques from 1888. You get what I mean? So it hasn't changed. Like it has changed a lot in certain ways. It hasn't changed a lot in many other ways. Like the basics are the same. The communications of it are different. Okay. Well, if you have any other questions, thank you very much.